Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How you
Thanks
doing?
for doing all right, bro. Thanks for coming again. It's been 8 months. It's been 8 months since we did our last video.
Really? Eight
Yeah,
months?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So,
wow.
alhamdulillah. So there's been a lot of videos that come out since then. If you guys don't know Farhan, I feel sorry for you. But alhamdulillah, Farhan Ahmed is the founder of Ihsan Coaching. He does a lot of coaching across the nation, actually, for married couples, for individuals, for teenagers, divorcees, you name it, right? And so he has a really good view on what the Muslim community is going through. And the other day, I posted a question on my Instagram about what should my next topic be, right? And the choice was drugs or cheating, infidelity.
Yeah.
And the majority said infidelity. And there was a lot of questions and a lot of responses that people had about, can cheating be forgivable? Can it not be forgivable? Why do people cheat? And I thought to myself, I'm a lawyer. I see how this works from the divorce perspective, but I can't understand why people cheat.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, as a trained therapist, I'm sure you have a better insight, right? So
Yeah.
I guess let's start from there. Do Muslims have this problem?
Oh, of course. I mean, it's just not. It's just not for non-Muslim. It doesn't just happen in non-Muslim society, right? It also happens within Muslims.
No, absolutely. And so, what about the reasons for infidelity or cheating? Do you think that they're different in our community versus outside our community?
Not really. I believe in general that Muslims are very much alike, very much the same as non-Muslims, right? Other than that, we are Muslims and we have Muslim names. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, many of us have gone to public schools, and even those that have gone to private Islamic schools, I mean, the same issues that happen with non-Muslims happen with Muslims. You still got drugs. Muslims are getting involved in alcohol. They're getting in trouble with the law. They're doing everything the same as non-Muslims.
Absolutely.
But maybe to a lesser extent.
Yeah.
Right? So even when it comes to infidelity, I mean, yes, maybe Islam was holding us back, but as the generations, more like we've been living here longer and getting accustomed to the West,
Yeah.
we're becoming more like non-Muslims in the sense that, even their ideals and what they've been doing, we also inculcate that within our lives as well.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. I mean, we do have a whole system. We have, these boundaries that are supposed to, protect us from that. And maybe we'll get to that towards the end of the video, like the Islamic perspective on infidelity. But so commonly, like, what are some common reasons for infidelity? Is it one? Is it many? Like, how do we impact that? How do we start to understand why are Muslims stepping out on their spouses?
So, I mean, this is a loaded question, right? I mean, we like to pigeonhole ourselves into simple answers and say, okay, this is what the reason is. And I mean, commonly you probably heard, and many people have heard that, for men, it's more variety and it's more just sexual dissatisfaction. And for women, it's more emotion-based, right? And while that's generally true for the most part, right, it's more nuanced than that. And if you look at like the research, right, the General Social Survey, and I was just, this is a topic that always fascinates me because how common it's becoming.
Yeah.
And you see that 20% of men have stepped out in their marriages, right? And 13% of women have stepped out in their marriages. And you might say, well, 13%, that's not as much, right? Compared to like 20%, one out of every five.
Yeah.
But if you've seen it, if you look at the data, that's 40% increase than the past 2 decades for women.
Really?
40% increase, right? So women are catching up to men, and if you look at it, like if you break it down by age groups, women are step out more than men between the ages of 18 to 29. Right, this is all according to the General Social Survey.
Yeah.
And then it peaks for men in their 50s to 59 age, and then for women in their 40s to their 49 age range, right? But I mean, it's fascinating to see that typically, like, we like to think that men do cheat more than women. Let's not downplay that, but the thing is that at the age range from 18 to 29, more women step out than men, right? And now, well, you might say, well, what are the reasons, right? What are the reasons that women might cheat on their spouses, what are the reasons that men might cheat on their spouses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right? And for women, it could be a variety of reasons. One could be, anger. They're angry with their husbands, right? Another is their revenge. Their husband cheated on them, so now I want to cheat on my husband. For some women, it's low self-esteem, right? They love that attention. They like that attention.
And they're not getting that attention.
Yeah, they're not getting their attention from at home, and so then they like that attention, and it causes them to feel better about themselves and feel more, lack of better words, sexy, right?
Yeah.
And so forth. And then there was a book by Alicia Walker called The Secret Life of a Cheating Wife, where she interviewed many women, and one of the reasons that these women said that they cheated on their husbands is to save their marriages.
Okay.
Right? To save their marriages. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
How does that make sense to cheat on your husband to save your marriage? Well, the women said that, because of sexual dissatisfaction themselves, like they didn't feel satisfied that they were not getting the orgasms that they desired.
Yeah.
Right? So they were not happy with their sexual life. So now they were getting it from somewhere else so that they could remain married and remain happy with their spouse. So I found that very interesting.
It's like outsourcing that part of your marriage to somebody else.
Yeah, outsourcing that to somebody else. So I mean, so as you can see, it's more nuanced than that emotional connection, which is the number one reason why women do cheat, is because yes, they are looking to be emotionally connected with someone else, like with their spouse. But when you're not giving that emotional connection that which they're craving, then yes, they will go outside and seek that as well. I mean, and that's not just for women as well, right? That's men do the same thing. Now we like to think of it as men, where they like just variety and it's more sexual in nature, which it is, but we tend to disregard the fact that they like that emotional connection as well. And I've seen that with a lot of men is when they clients that I've worked with and people I've worked with, or just friends I've talked to, or people, I wouldn't call them friends, but acquaintances. Let me correct myself. Bro. Yeah. People that I have spoken to me about this, because people know that I'm a therapist, so they just want to talk about it and so forth. They don't feel like that they have that emotional connection with their spouse as well, right? Their wife. And every person offers something different. And they might be looking for that, to be able to connect with someone maybe on a different level, right? So your wife might be perfect or quote unquote perfect in many aspects, but maybe you can't open up to them like you could to this woman, right? Or maybe there's some things that you can't say where she's going to judge you and this woman wouldn't, right? So again, it doesn't make it right. But these are some of the reasons.
So do you think that when we're talking about cheating or infidelity or stepping out, it doesn't necessarily mean physical or going all the way, right? You know what I mean? Like in terms of, it doesn't mean that you've hit the home run. Are there different levels of cheating, emotional versus physical? And is there any differentiation in the literature about that? Yeah,
of course. I mean, like I said, for women, it's more, in general, it's more emotion-based. For men, it's more physical-based. Sure. And it differs, right? So men, in general, they are more willing to forgive their wife if it's more emotion-based, right? Where women are more willing to forgive their husbands if it's physical-based.
So interesting, right?
Right?
That's very interesting.
So, it's very interesting. When you read upon that, it's like, okay, the differences with the
because
genders.
That's what they want, right? Because the guy wants the physical, and if you're gonna step out and be physical with it, that might be unforgivable. And for the wife, they want the emotional, and if you step up emotionally, then that's detrimental for them. Yeah,
it's very detrimental for them. But there's levels to this as well, because let's say you probably heard this term work wife or work husband.
Yes.
Right? That doesn't necessarily mean that they're sleeping together. Right? That just means that they might just have that husband, quote unquote, husband and wife relationship at the workplace, where it's just more emotional, right? But they haven't actually gone outside and did something together, right? So there's different levels to this as well. But women are less forgiving if it is more emotional based.
Yeah.
But that's where I think the biggest problem occurs is when it becomes it becomes more physical, right? Because then more emotions are attached to that relationship, right? And it's harder to break it off too.
So once, like, based off your experience, like individuals or couples who one of them have cheated, what is the likelihood of them getting back together? And is there certain things that you've seen that makes it more likely that they get back together versus not getting back together?
Yeah. So there was a research study that I was reading up upon, and they said that, and again, general social survey, right?
Mm-hmm.
They said that 40% of couples that have, or people that were married, they ended up divorcing after infidelity, right? Whereas people that weren't, they were faithful in their marriages, only 17%, right?
Okay.
So you see the stark difference there.
Yeah.
You're more likely to get a divorce
Of course.
if you do step out in your marriages.
And that could be obviously because you were dissatisfied and then you cheated. But I guess how would therapy or going through counseling, how would that help a couple perhaps try to save their marriage if one of them did cheat? Like, is that something people are neglecting? Is that a useful tool to try to help a couple get through that?
So when it comes to counseling, I feel like, look, and this might be a little bit controversial, right? But the thing is that it could, like, when a couple finds out that you always have to take the silver lining out of everything, right? You have to look at everything. Okay, what positives can I take out of this? Yes, I'll preface it. Cheating is never the answer, and it's never the best thing to do, and obviously it's completely wrong. Yeah. But okay, now what can we do? What are we going to do as a couple at that moment? The husband or the wife, somebody stepped out in the marriage, and now what? And the way that I always handle it is I said, okay, this is your time now to be open and honest with one another. There's obviously things that were not working in the marriage. Yeah. So, you already hit the lowest part of your marriage, right? So now, rather than just walking on eggshells and feeling like you can't speak to one another or you can't really say how you felt in the marriage, take this time to actually open up and say, what can we do to fix this? And the biggest problem that I see usually is that the spouse that cheated doesn't want to admit it. Yeah. Right? Doesn't want to talk about it because they're scared that they're going to hurt their spouse, right? But then I always
they did it.
They already did it.
Yeah, exactly.
They already hurt their spouse, right?
Yeah.
But now this is your chance to try and fix it. But at the flip side, the person that got cheated on, if they really want this marriage to work, and I tell this to every couple that comes in, I get it, you're hurt. I get it that, you're in a lot of emotional pain.
Of course.
But if you're here and you want this marriage to work, you have to learn to forget, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're here, you have to understand that he's going to say, or he or she are going to say some hurtful things in here to try getting the marriage better, but you cannot hold that against them as well, right? Because if you're going to hold that against them and then keep using it at home when we're not in the sessions, guess what? They're not going to feel comfortable later on to open up.
Of course.
Right? And then they're just going to stay mouthed and then not say anything. So then how are you ever going to work on the marriage and improve it?
So do you think that it's a symptom of marriage problems or like an individual problem? Like, I almost, we say that the marriage isn't working or they're not finding that satisfaction in the marriage, but is that a marriage problem or is that a person problem?
Yeah, so the way that I like to think about it, where I was like pondering upon this, is that, I think we watch all these movies, or people watch all these movies and, think about the knight in shining armor, the Cinderella, the perfect person. And, the only perfect person that ever existed was the Prophet ﷺ, right? Yeah. And he had every single quality that anybody would want, right, in a husband. But now what happens is that we're all like duped into this whole finding perfection. And when you get married and then you realize that your spouse is not quote unquote perfect, now you feel dissatisfied. And that's where we need to take a step back and think about, okay, when you're getting married, we're not looking for the perfect person.
Yeah.
We're looking for the person who's most compatible.
Sure.
Right? And what does compatibility imply? That they're not going to always have the same qualities or the qualities that you're looking for, right? It's the most compatible person. So there's going to be differences. And if we come in with that mindset that, okay, there's going to be differences between us, but we're in most areas we're compatible, I think we'll be more satisfied with who we choose. The problem is that when you're trying to look for perfection and you don't find it, then you just, according, like what I've been thinking about is that, you just become more dissatisfied than in general. And so it could, for some people, it's an individual problem, right? And for others, it is a marital, like the marriage is in shambles, and they're just looking for a way out or looking for some excitement or something different.
Absolutely. I've even heard of people like they almost want to get caught.
Oh yeah, that's what some researchers say as well. Some people actually cheat in hopes to getting caught because they don't want to just break off the relationship, right?
Yeah.
And just say like, hey, I'm done with this marriage and so forth. So they're kind of hoping that they get caught in the act, so then they're not the ones that have to end it.
That's pretty interesting. That I was reading that too. That was pretty shocking to me. What do you think about a cheater is always a cheater?
I don't think that's always true, right? I've seen people that have cheated and, it was a mistake. Like they were just caught up in the moment. And I think for most people, like it's some sort of some excitement back into their lives and they realize, okay, what they did was wrong and they're willing to, work on it. But yes, if a person was a sex addict, then, I mean, it's going to be, it's for those people, it's very difficult to stop, right? So I don't think a cheater is always a cheater. I think we have to be, have to see the good within people as well, right? Because if we're always going to think that, oh, this person, I mean, you could apply that to anything. Okay, this person cheated, now he's always going to be a cheater. Or if that person stole from you, then, or stole in general, then they're always going to be a stealer, right? If we're going to apply that concept across the board, then we're always going to have this negative perception of people, and then we're going to just live in a depressing world, right?
No, that would be a very depressing world.
Yeah, to think that, oh, this person is defined by the act that they did.
Do you think that the confines of Islam or the rules and boundaries of Islam in terms of, not having free mixing and this idea of khalwa meaning like not being alone with another woman or another man, do you think that when that opportunity now expresses itself or it comes in front of you, do you think that Muslims are more susceptible to falling into cheating or not?
Well, I don't think it just starts with khalwa. Yes, at even the first meeting, if there was khalwa, they were alone. I don't think person's like thinking, okay, let me start cheating.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it could be just that they're just talking and that they're just maybe flirting. I mean, if we're talking about the textbook, like, okay, now they're actually engaged in the act. That's what I mean by cheating. Yes, this is also a form of cheating as well.
Yeah.
But I think the more that a person talks to the opposite gender, and the more that they are alone, then obviously we know that the third person is always shaitan.
Yeah.
And at that point, I mean, there's only so much you could hold yourself back, right? So many times that you could hold yourself back, and eventually, how strong is a man or a woman, right? The desires are going to overtake them, where they're going to engage in a sexual act, right? It all leads to that. It will lead to that. The more you talk with them, the more that you spend time with that person.
Like that step by step.
It's a step by step process. I don't think it just immediately is like, hey, let's just go and have sexual intimacy, right? It's a step by step process.
And so that's another question, right? Is that where do you think most people are finding that person to cheat with? Is it work, school? Where is this happening?
Yeah, I mean, these websites, right? A lot of one is work,
Yeah.
Right? Work is definitely there because it's people you're close contact.
8 hours a day.
8 hours a day. You're
going
spending
through
more
stress
time.
together. Exactly.
Exactly. You're spending more time with them than even your own spouse,
Yeah.
right? But also these websites, a lot of people sign up for these websites. And I've heard a lot of people get caught through these websites. I mean, think about this one. There was a website called Ashley Madison.
Yeah, I heard about
right?
this, yeah.
Ashley Madison was a website that for people who, like a lot of people that were married, is like cheating discreetly.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, there's so many avenues today that there weren't before that it's readily available, like to cheat. I mean, you got Tinder, you had salams that would used to be Minder, right?
Yeah.
With swipe right, swipe left. You got Muzmatch, where people using that. Yes, they're marriage apps, but I mean, we know that more than that goes on, right? So there's so many different avenues that to find somebody nowadays.
So, like, one thing I was thinking about is, like, how the workforce has changed and how more, men and women are working side by side and, like, this kind of corporate culture, right? Where you have, let's say your boss is a man or you're a female and your boss is a male or vice versa, right? And how that dynamic, or you're working in a cube next to each other, and how that can lead to something like this. Do you think that, part of Islam is teaching us that we should stay away, we should be in our own areas? Like, I almost think that this new work style is actually leading to the increase. I know you're talking about apps, but I almost feel like when you're doing the apps, you almost have that intention that you're going to go onto this application in order to cheat. Whereas where you're at work, it's like that's not your intention, but it's kind of just happening.
Yeah, it just naturally happens because, it's like, there's a video, right? Can guys and girls be friends? And you think that, okay, they're just my coworker, right? We could just have a natural conversation and everything will be fine and you're not thinking about it. But over time, the more you talk to a person, the more you realize how much in common you have with them and how much you might actually like talking to them, right? You come back home, there might be some fights, there might be some, like, a lot of stress, kids, different money issues, whatever. But at work, now it's just a fun conversation.
Exactly.
It's just a fun conversation that you're having with the other person where there's no stress, nothing.
No real life.
No real life.
Yep.
And then you're just talking about frivolous things. And then over time, you're just like, oh, wow, you know what? This is pretty cool. I like this.
Yep.
And then just one thing leads to another. So, I mean, the workforce, the work culture, I do think that it promotes that, right? Because the more you are around people, the more you're going to realize how much you have in common with them, and the more you're going to like talking to them.
Yeah, subhanAllah. And that's what I've been thinking about a lot is, like, this whole shift into everybody working, right? I almost think it's there's so many negatives to it, right? I mean, not having enough children and, getting married later and later, and then you have more exposure to the opposite gender. You might be, more prone to cheating.
Yeah.
And so there's so many interesting things when, like, society is forcing everybody to go and work.
It's interesting that you said that because you might say, well, why is the percentage of women that are involved in infidelity increasing?
Yeah.
Right? And so some of the research out there was showing that because now they are working, they're more willing to take that risk because of the financial impact that it might have, right?
Yeah.
Whereas men before, like, if the woman was not working, they were willing to take that risk because they're dependent upon the man. But now, since the women are equally making just as much, they're not as financially dependent, they're willing to take that risk because if something were to happen, guess what? I could still financially support myself, right? I don't have to worry about it. And that's a question I have for you as well, is like, I was curious, is that as a lawyer, if two people, like, if a person was caught cheating, how would that impact a divorce case?
That's interesting because Illinois is actually a no-fault state. So no fault means that you can get married or you can get divorced for no reason. All you have to tell the judge is, Judge, we have irreconcilable differences. We tried to work out those differences, and it's not practicable for us to get back together. That's it. That's all you have to prove. So much so they don't care if you cheated. The only thing they would care about in a divorce case is, did you spend money on that person? If you spent money on that affair, okay, then that might matter because the wife or the husband can claim half of that back. But besides that, The court doesn't care
So
at all.
custody battles,
Nothing.
anything.
Nothing.
Wow.
It's not, you can't even bring it up. And I know there's so many guys and girls who want me to go to the judge and like lambaste their spouse because they cheated on them. But honestly, the judges don't care. And it's not even relevant at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Illinois is a no fault state.
Most states now are moving towards no fault.
Really?
And so much so in Illinois that even if you cheat on your spouse, you can still get maintenance.
Really?
Alimony.
Wow.
There are certain states that say that you can't get alimony if you cheated on your spouse, but in Illinois, that's not even a factor.
So if you're the cause for divorce,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You still get half of everything. You still get maintenance. You still get everything. Yeah.
Wow.
You know, there was a point you were bringing up about guys and girls. So do you think that guys and girls can be friends?
No. I don't think so. I mean,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I mean, look, there was a YouTube video, right? Yeah. This had 3 million views. I mean, the guy would go around college campuses asking this question to non-Muslims, right? Do you think guys and girls can be friends? And the girl or the guy, somebody would say, yeah, I think they can. And then they ask the other person, and they'll be like, yeah, you know, like the politically correct answer, I think we could be friends. Then he says, all right, if he gave you a chance or she gave you a chance to have sex with, would you do it? And like, heck yeah. You know, like, what? I mean, because one person might be thinking, okay, we're friends. Yeah. You know? But usually the other person, but the other person is thinking, man, you know what? I could see myself with you. Yeah. Right? I could see like us being in a relationship. Or, hey, you're pretty cute. Right? Even if the guy, like, I mean, it's not always the woman too. I mean, like, think about it. I mean, I don't like to play anybody or say anything bad about a person, but like, let's say if there was that woman that was not good looking, right? And I've seen this happen a lot in high school. I remember because a lot of guys, they would have friends, guys and girls were quote unquote friends, and a lot of the times the guys would be like, yeah, I would never do anything with that girl. But that girl would always say, yeah, if he gave me a chance, if he gave me a chance, but they wouldn't because they didn't like you, he didn't like how she looked or whatever. So I mean, it goes both ways, right? I don't think in general two people could be friends because over time, what's going to happen is you're going to find that person. I mean, think about the people you're friends with in general. You're friends with people who are most compatible with you. Yeah. You like to hang out with them because they have your same interests, right? Now, you have this friend that's a girl, right? And she's a friend, and now you keep getting dumped, right? Or you start going, like, things are not working out with other women. Now you're going to look at her and be like, man, you know what? She's always been there for me. Yeah. She's always been that rock solid person. We have a lot in common. And then one thing's going to lead to another. You're going to, make a move. Right, that's why they call it the rebound. Yeah, right? The rebound, and so forth. And we always used to joke when we were younger, right? The easiest way to get a girl, right, is just to wait your turn. Is to wait your turn. Wait till she gets dumped. Wait till like she has all the breakups and everything, and then finally she's gonna look at you and be like, "You've always been the nice guy." Right?
The nice guy.
The nice guy.
Nice guys finish last, bro. They do finish last. I was just gonna say that, but yeah, anyway.
They do finish last, but I've seen this on more than one occasion. Yeah. I've seen this happen a lot. Like, I had this friend. I mean, this is all bad because obviously we're Muslims, right? And we should not be dating and we should be doing this. But again, you asked me at the beginning, what's the difference between Muslims and non-Muslims? And unfortunately, I don't see much difference today. We have to have more taqwa and we have to have more control, right? But unfortunately, with everything that's happening around the world and how, sexual everything's becoming, we're falling victim to that as well. But this guy, going back to the story, I'll finish it up, is that he really liked this girl. And what happened was that she would never give him the time of day. And I told him, I was like, bro, you just got to move on. Like, don't even, like, just get away from her. Don't try, man. I mean, this is haram, and everything. And she kept going through guys and so forth. And he was always the person that she would lean on, right? After every breakup. Yeah. Eventually, what happened is that she came through and she's like, you know what? I want to be with you because you've always been there. I told them, I said, you got to run. Heck yeah. Run. Heck because... Yeah. I mean, like, look, I get it. She's a Muslimah and everything like that. But, I mean, you've been saving yourself for all this time. I mean, you don't want to just be a rebound at that point. You want somebody to love you for the qualities that you possess.
Yeah.
You know, not just that, oh, you've been there always for me.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. Now, kind of turning it to the Islamic perspective, right?
Yeah.
Because, we understand that there's a difference between like fornication and adultery, right? Like fornication is premarital sex, let's say, right? Whereas adultery is the being married and stepping out of the marriage, right? And the punishments in Islam are actually very different between the two, right? One might be, a punishment in exile or something like that, where the other one might be something much worse than that.
It's 100 lashes or something, right? Or 80 or 100.
And I was pondering on that, and it makes sense, right? In the sense that how cheating on your spouse can destabilize your house, but also destabilize the community, because you are now impacting potentially two families, right? When you are cheating with somebody who's married, or you're married yourself.
And that's why the punishment is so severe.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, for people that don't know, I mean, in the books of fiqh, it's stoning the person to death.
Yeah.
Right? Because the societal damage that it could cause. I mean, think about what it does when you find out a person has cheated. It gives you the himmah.
Yeah.
It gives you the courage. You're like, they got away with it, or they did it.
Yeah.
Maybe I could do it too.
No, that's one perspective.
I step out. And then also, like, what it does to the family. How, like, I always tell people that you have to, if you want a strong family, you have to work on the foundation.
Yeah.
Right? If the foundation is weak, no matter what you build upon it, the pillars and everything, if the foundation is shaky, everything will come crumbling down. Right?
Yeah.
But if the foundation is strong, whatever you built upon it will remain strong, inshallah. And unfortunately with cheating, I mean, yeah, not unfortunately, but like with cheating, what happens is that, marriages become in shambles.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just think about like how that impacts like the children knowing, like the society knowing that your parent or your mom or your dad cheated, right? Like that's one thing. Like the other thing is like, two families now potentially going through divorce, or one family going through divorce, and now both people are quote unquote stained with that on their shoulders. And so I can see like the societal impact that it has, and I'm seeing it a lot actually.
Yeah.
I'm actually seeing from my cases, just as many as, there's domestic violence cases and in-law issues and financial issues, there's cheating, just as much cheating, right?
Oh.
Man or woman.
Yes.
And I can see like the impact that it has, and it's almost like it brings this callousness to that individual who is cheating, right? Like they almost don't give a
they don't care
crap about anything.
They don't care anymore.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so sad. It's so like scary that you've become so desensitized of the impact that you have on other people.
And I always say that the people that get hurt the most or affected the most are children in all of this.
Yeah.
We don't think about them, but they're helpless in all the situations. They often don't know what's going on. And think about how damaging that is to know that, oh, my father, my mother stepped out, right? And like had sexual intimacy with somebody else.
Yeah.
And people talking about it, and they're hearing it, and they can't do anything. And they love their parents still, right? They're not, for the most part, they're going to still love their parents. And they're going to have to deal with it, and they're helpless in this. And now what happens if a divorce happens? They're just shuffled between houses. Yeah. And, they're in this whole custody battle and everything. But even if the parents remain together, I mean, they're dealing with the emotional fallout of everything. And there's so much research upon this, what happens to the children, right? Especially if the father or the mother is not in their lives.
Yeah. I was thinking also, like, somebody on the Instagram, they responded, and it was really true. I think it's really true that you might forgive them, but you might not forget it.
Yeah.
And that's what's so scary to me, is that I think that you might get forgiven, you might forgive that person, but there is no way you're ever going to forget that.
You're never going to forget it, right? It's always going to be in the back of your mind. And, we're talking about children just right now, but think about how that's going to impact them when they get married.
Yeah.
Right? When they're looking for
trust
the spouse,
issues.
the trust issues. Exactly,
Trust.
They're going to have a lot of trust issues.
Yeah.
And to thinking that, okay, this person that I'm marrying, are they going to be faithful to me or not?
Yeah.
And then they constantly question it. And that's going to cause a lot of problems too, because like, if you're innocent and you're constantly being questioned, oh, are you cheating on me? What are you doing? Either you're going to get annoyed of it, or you're gonna be like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
You know, like I can't deal with this anymore, right? Because it's not like in a relationship, trust has to be there, and if you feel like your spouse doesn't trust you, then you're like, you know, over time, you're gonna be like, you know what, screw this, I'm just gonna do it then. You know, if you don't trust me anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And the other side I was thinking about too is kind of bringing it to layer 2, right? Is this whole second wife situation. Okay, I don't know if you're expecting this or not.
I was not expecting this.
I wonder, is it still cheating? Is it still cheating to have a second wife?
I mean, there's so many layers to this question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, unfortunately, and I know I'm going to get a lot of heat for this, right? But it's for some people, actually for majority of people, they rather their spouse cheat than get a second wife.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's really wrong from an Islamic perspective.
Yeah.
Because one, okay, they might not have gotten the second wife in the most Islamic manner.
Yeah.
But the fact that they did that, they actually got a nikah, right? I mean, one is zina, one is not.
Yeah.
You know, you can't equate the two.
Yeah.
You know, one is punishable, like if we were to look at the shari hukum, one is punishable by stoning a person to death, one is not, right? So, I mean, we cannot equate the two, and unfortunately more women are okay with the fact that the husband cheated, right, rather than getting a second nikah.
But going back to your point, right? Like that physical versus emotional cheating, I think that's playing a role here, right? In terms of why perhaps a wife would rather their husband cheat than get married, because now they see that the emotional side is being diverted, that the financials are also being split now. Yeah. And so I can see that, but I wonder like what was the psychology of the women during the time of the Sahaba, moving forward. And I've also heard too that there's certain scholars who say that it's not allowed to have a second wife in the Western context.
I mean, it all depends which scholars you follow,
of course,
right?
Of course.
I mean, the more traditional, quote unquote, scholars would say you can't say that. You can't say that.
Yeah.
The more quote unquote modern scholars would say, yes, it's not permissible because of the law, right?
The law.
You can't have more than one wife.
Yeah.
I mean, that's beyond my realm. I'll leave that to the scholars to debate that, right? But I mean, going back to the whole second wife aspect of it, I think, for the guys, like, let's go behind the psychology of why a man might do that, right? Is that they don't necessarily want to leave their wife, right? They're looking as this a way to get their whatever needs that are not being fulfilled, right? So they still love their wives. I do believe that you could love your first wife and still want another person. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, now that I'm cheating is I don't love, or having a second wife, I don't love that person. Yeah. And you're trying to get a need fulfilled, which you're not getting, and you think that, okay, now the second person could fulfill that. Right? So, I mean, if we're going back into this whole, like, second wives thing, I do think that, there's a lot of research upon this. I think it's society-based. Like, if you go to Africa, you go to places where it's more acceptable, they could deal with it better. Right, they're emotionally able to deal with it better. Whereas in the West, it's still like very taboo, right? Other than in like the Mormon culture, so forth. Sure. So, and it's unheard of. But I do think that as society, like, things become more common, right? People are more equipped and better equipped to deal with it, right? But as of now, I don't think we're at that level at all.
That's what I was thinking too. I don't think that. For the vast majority of women, I think they would be more hurt, like you're saying, with the second wife than the husband cheating.
And I don't have any.
And I'm not talking from Islamic.
And I don't have any research upon this, right? But I think it's more that they'll be more hurt is because they don't know anybody else that's in the same situation. Yeah. It's like, I'm the only person. Yeah. Log kya kenge, right? Yeah. Like how are people going to look at me? Yeah. Whereas I heard in places in England, like Mufti Ibn Adam al-Khotri, he came to Dar es Salaam and he was talking about it. He said, according to what, like, his research, obviously anecdotal and stuff like that, I mean, he every single family has somebody in their household that has a second wife. It's more common over there. So it's, yes, is it readily accepted? Not really, but it's more accepted than it is here in the US, because even the scholars, a lot of scholars have done it over there, the bigger people, right? So you look to your leaders, and if more people are doing it, then it becomes more accepted. And I think that's what is causing like a lot of women to not like that, right? It's like, oh, you know what, now I like, if we like readily accept it, then it's going to be widespread as well, right?
No,
So there's a lot of, I mean, I know some people that got married a second time. I've heard stories, and usually that's like, you know, the wives will call each other and say, oh, don't invite this person over, don't let them, they're shunned from society. You know, you get shunned from society. You know, people are trying to ruin your life if you have a business, so forth. So I mean, that's why I say that I don't think we're at that point here in America.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either. And so kind of going now to maybe the solutions, right? Like, how can we try to avoid it, right? Obviously we have Islamic dictates, but also, you know, from a psychological, from a therapeutic perspective, like, how can we lessen the want of cheating, and make it, you know, not as common, or not let our numbers catch up to the rest of society?
I mean, I think we can never forget first of all, and I'm going to go in more detail about this, but the first thing is tawakkul, right? You can never like downplay tawakkul, right? I mean, that God consciousness and having the fear of Allah is what's ultimately going to stop us from doing anything. I mean, think about it. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of Muslim guys, and they said that, you know, if it wasn't for Islam, they probably would be cheating, right? They'd probably be doing a lot of things, but or drinking or anything, right? Anything. It's not just cheating, but we're doing a lot of things that are impermissible within Sharia, right? But that having that God consciousness will stop us, and being in those gatherings where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is remembered, right? And constantly learning about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and getting closer to him. That's the basic, that number one, what we have to inculcate within our lives. You could do everything else, but if that's not there, nothing else is going to work. Right? But now, what else? Because, see, everything you watch, everything around you is very sexual.
And it's promoting it,
It's promoting it. I mean, Pakistani dramas are all about cheating, infidelity. So the spouse cheated, or the wife cheated, like the husband or the wife cheated, and so forth, and they're, you know, divorcing and all of these things. And then, or if you're watching Netflix is known for sex and violence, right? HBO, Game of Thrones, all of these things. Everywhere you're looking, you're going to the cashier, you're checking out, you see the magazines all about sex. You know, this person sleeping with that person. Everywhere around you, it's all about sexual. So the more that we look at these things, the more that we watch it, guess what's going to happen? We're going to inculcate it. We're going to do it ourselves.
Desensitize.
Desensitize. We're going to become desensitized to all of this. And then we're just going to, you know, and you could try your best to like withhold, but eventually you're going to slip up, right? That's why, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the Quran? La taqribu zina. Right? He doesn't say don't commit zina. He says don't even come close to it.
Exactly.
Right? Because these are the gateways. These are the gateways to committing zina. It's not like a person just, I mean, automatically just, you know, commits it. You know, they might have watched pornography, right? Or they might have watched something over there on TV or something like that, and now they're getting like all these thoughts in their head, and, you know, and they're getting ideas as well, right? So all this fahisha that's promoted, you know, we have to first protect their eyes, protect their gaze, and not interact with the opposite gender. I know a lot of people say, well, how are you going to do that in today's society and so forth? But I mean, look what's happening. You know, the scholars that say don't do any of these things, they say they're backwards, right? They say that those scholars are backwards. But then you're seeing that how many people are falling into this, right? Because they're
because it's happening. It's there. Happening. You're there. You're in that environment for it to happen.
I mean, we're visual people. If we see a pretty person, then we're like, oh, you know what? We're the first. You're automatically going to start thinking about, I wonder how it is. I wonder what's going on. I mean, you just talk to women or men or anything. I mean, everybody, because of the society we live in, everybody has dirty thoughts.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't like to talk about it because it's the haya, or it's, we should have some modesty or whatever. But I mean, these are things, or it's the elephant in the room, but this is the things that we need to talk about openly, right? I've had so many clients that actually came in and, they got caught, right? But they said that the more that they talk about it with me, the better they feel. And they're like, you know what, and they start to think how dumb it is, right? But they were never able to open up, right, about what they're feeling or are their thoughts. Because if they told their spouse, then guess what? They might hold it against them. Yeah. Like, how can you have these thoughts? How can you even think like that? Am I not enough? And so forth, right? But you have to realize that we're human beings. That's why.
So you think it's healthy to actually express?
Oh, it's very healthy. I think so.
That's scary, bro.
It is scary, but I think it is healthy because, I mean, that's how you also get a deeper connection too. If you feel like there's no boundaries at that moment, like, I'm not saying like you do anything wrong, but I'm saying like I could be open with my spouse and I don't feel like they're going
like
to
open
me.
In the sense, hey, I think she's good looking.
No. I mean, there's some things that you should, right? But let's say that you have these thoughts, like, there's a mufti, Mufti Abdurrahman ibn Mangira. You probably heard of him.
Yeah, of course.
Right? White Thread Press.
The Handbook of Marriage.
Yeah,
Really
so
good book.
He has this on YouTube. You could search this up. It's an advice to women. He said that women, let your men talk to you about wanting a second wife. Right? Okay. He says that.
Okay.
Because sometimes, when you talk about it and then you, express it, it's like anger. When you hold in the anger, guess what? If you never talk about your anger or express it, you're going to one day just unleash it upon somebody. You're going to do something. But when you go through it and you, write it down or you talk to somebody about your anger, you decompress and you feel better about the situation. Same thing for men. When they talk about these things, the talkers never do anything. Yeah. It's the people that don't talk that always act.
That's
right?
A good point. That's a good point.
So, yes, a wife might never want to hear it. Yeah. But it's better that you talk to them about it than they actually do something behind your back.
No, of course.
Right?
Of course. No, we're talking about the Islamic, solutions to preventing this, right? I didn't mean to cut off your tangent, but something came to my mind that the Islamic solutions is obviously, no free mixing, try to stay separate, whatever. But what about the extreme, right? Like, you kind of see the extremes in America or in the Muslim world where, it's 100% segregation, right? Yeah. Between men and women. So much so, I feel like once that kid goes to college and the first girl, says a word to them, it's game over, right? So, how do we strike that balance between, yes, there's not supposed to be khalwa, but at the same time, and not khalwa, they're not supposed to be free mixing, but we're supposed to still interact with the opposite gender and not, be, scared almost.
So Dr. Yasser Qadi had a very interesting take on this, right?
Yeah, actually, I listened to his. Yeah.
And that was a very interesting take on it. And obviously, he said that, we need more discussion upon it. And I do think, I'm glad that he actually brought that up because, look, you go from one extreme of no talking, no looking, nothing to now free mixing. Yeah. Right? I always tell people that there's multiple ways of finding a spouse, and the best way to find a spouse is through college, right? Because here are people, your peers. I mean, obviously, don't go flirting and don't go, dating or anything. But now you could actually see, okay, this is probably somebody I might actually have the most compatibility with. They're actually in the same major. They like probably the same things. We all know about everybody, indirectly and so forth. And you like somebody, now approach their parents or take it to your parents or take it to a sheikh or somebody like that and then go the next step and then get premarital to see if you are actually compatible with one another. And one of the things that we do talk about in premarital is also sexual intimacy, right? Because that's a big component of marriage. Yeah. And actually, we were talking about why does men cheat, or why do men might step out of their marriages and stuff like that. And one of the things that we don't talk enough about is lack of intimacy, lack of sex, right? If a person was getting it on the regular, right, and they're more satisfied, guess what? They're less likely, and this is just not me, this is research saying this, they're less likely to go step out. Yeah. But if you're not getting it on the regular, you're not having sexual intimacy on the regular, then now that's consuming your mind. Yeah. So guess what? the first person that talks to you, or you're more likely to just go look for somebody else to get release yourself, right?
Yeah.
So we have to also talk about this part of it and see, okay, are they on the same wavelength when it comes to sexual intimacy, like libido wise and so forth, right? And often we don't talk about
That's
that.
a really good point. That's a really good point, that this cheating, the potential for it could actually be addressed before they even get married.
Yeah, it definitely could be addressed. And even you said, okay, what are some solutions? I mean, inside the marriage, I just wish people were more upfront with each other and they would be more open. Look, we understand that maybe not everybody has the best sexual life, like the bedroom life, right? And you have to express that to your spouse. And sometimes they're too afraid. Like if you want different positions, you want to do something differently, you want to experiment, right? Obviously within the Sharia and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with that. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made halal for you.
Yeah.
Right? But now we're too shy to open up or to say anything, and then it causes so much dissatisfaction. And I tell couples, like, okay, look, I get it, you're shy, you don't want to bring it up, but for 80% of the guys, it all comes back to this. For most of the time, is that they're not sexually satisfied, and it's also growing for women as well. They're being more vocal now. So I wish that these are some things that could be worked upon, like talking about intimacy, but it's just not that. It's all as well. It's different parts, right? There's lack of communication. Okay, let's work on the lack of communication. Let's work on the friendship of the marriage, right? If you develop a deeper friendship, guess what? You're going to be more intimate with each other because, you're going to spend more time. You're going to feel like this person actually cares about you. And when that happens, you feel you want to be more intimate with that person.
Dude, that's a really good point that you brought up. Like being friends with your spouse, right?
Yeah.
Like how can we become friends with our spouses?
So, it's interesting because a lot of marital therapists, they take the symptom-based approach, right? They say, okay, what are your problems? What problems are you dealing with? Oh, you're dealing with this, 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 this. All right, let's work on each one individually. Dr. John Gottman, he takes a different approach. He says, okay, let's work on the friendship of the marriage. If you work on the core, which is the friendship, all these symptoms will eventually go away.
That's so powerful, man. That's so
right?
powerful, yeah.
So that's the approach that I like taking myself because, like my dad's a doctor. And so if he says, if you go to a doctor and they try treating every symptom, that's a foolish person because once you treat this, another problem will occur. But if you treat the core issue, then everything will go away. And think about who you are, the friends why are you friends with the people who you're friends with? It's because you have a lot in common. You like their company, and you're more willing because you're friends with them to overlook their faults. But if you don't have that friendship, then anything they do is highlighted. So that's why the friendship is the core of a marriage.
So how do we build that?
You gotta come into Ihsan coaching. Right? Yeah, you gotta come in. I can't give you all my secrets. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, for everybody is different, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, I could give general advice, and I'll give you general advice as well. But the thing is, like, you gotta diagnose, you gotta understand what's going on in the marriage, right?
No, that makes sense.
It's a holistic picture.
Sense,
But some of the things that you can do, I mean, what he talks about is developing your love maps, right? These are compartments in your brain that you hold about your spouse, right? And knowing more about what it is that your spouse likes and dislikes are. And think about that, if my wife likes chai, and I go in the morning and I make chai, and I'm like, you know what, my wife likes chai too. Let me make it for her, and I bring it to her. I mean, something simple as that. How do you think that's gonna make her feel at that moment? That, oh my God, you were thoughtful. You cared about me. And if vice versa, if I'm coming home from a long day of work and my wife knows, okay, he likes XYZ, and I walk in the door and she's doing all that, automatically my mood is going to brighten up. I'm like, dang, man, this girl, she's a keeper, right? She's a keeper, right? And so forth. So it's just not that, but also remembering fond memories, right? Thinking about a lot, like life stresses happen, kids come in the picture, work related issues and everything, but it's going back about, okay, what were those fond memories, and talking about and words of affirmation as well, right? The more I compliment my wife, or the more I use words of affirmation, think about what that's going to do, how that's going to build a relationship, and make each other more connected and friendlier with each other.
I just saw like it was a thumbnail or something, like basically how the smartphone has gotten rid of intimacy, right? And so one of the problems that I see or I feel is like guys and maybe girls too is losing that empathy and that sympathy because now your attention is so diverted. In like you're kind of addicted to the cell phone and these external things that you don't build that intimacy anymore.
Oh, I mean, the cell phone is the worst thing. I mean, even something I have to like keep in mind, right? Because it diverts our attention. And, you know, Facebook and Google and all of these things all these tech companies have done so much research upon this, how they manipulate the algorithms to keep you constantly addicted to their apps, right?
Yeah, dude.
And that's the thing. They know exactly, why that person left. Okay, maybe they didn't like the content. Let's replace it with better content to keep them constantly addicted. And what's that doing is ruining the relationship between husband and spouse, right? Because now rather than talking or spending time with them, you're spending time with your phone. And a lot of times what's happening is we're watching TikTok, or people are watching TikToks, Instagram reels, Facebook reels, all of these things, and you're watching, I mean, think about 90% of that stuff is like girls and guys shaking their booties, right? And like doing impermissible things. And now you're looking at your spouse, you're looking at this, and you're just like, you know, like, exactly. Why can't my spouse be like this? Why can't my spouse do these things? And it's making you more dissatisfied in your relationship.
No, absolutely. And what I was thinking about is like that time before you fall asleep. Is so key, right? And you know, again, like you said, we all have this problem, right? Is I want to like make it, or my advice to everyone and to myself is that 30 minutes before you fall asleep, like use that to talk to your spouse rather than scrolling through your phone.
And I'm glad you brought this up. So one homework that I give every single couple that comes in is 10 minutes a day. I say 10 to 15 minutes a day. And Dr. John Gottman, I got this from him actually, is turn to your spouse, put away the phone, no TV, no distractions, no kids. If you have kids, nobody, you and your spouse, and just talk, converse for 10 minutes a day. I mean, you might think like 10 minutes, that's nothing.
It's actually,
But 10 minutes is so powerful. I mean, think about no distractions. You're giving quality time. But the sad part is how many couples come back and say, we couldn't do it. We can't do it.
You don't know what to
we
talk
didn't know
about.
what to talk about. We didn't know what to talk about. We just stared and we did it for maybe 1 day, 2 days, but we didn't do it the rest of the days.
They talk about their kids.
Yeah, they talk about their kids if they, you know, or something. Like, but I mean, but if you talk about your kids, at least you talk about something.
No, you're right.
A lot of couples can't even talk about their kids. They don't know what to talk about. They're just living in these marriages, and there's no communication at all, and it's just like a roommate. People are just coming in and going, right? And it's very sad, and that's what I'm saying. We got to build up the friendship again, learn how to communicate. And I tell couples, even if you cannot talk for 10 minutes, you stay there for 10 minutes, and you stare at each other for that. Because eventually somebody's going to feel uncomfortable and they're going to start talking. We have to start from somewhere. No, but if you're not going to give the effort, then how are things ever going to get better?
No, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
You have to give the effort.
There's another thing I was thinking about too, right? Is guys and men. Like, men are deteriorating in the sense like we're not men anymore, right? Yeah. Like we don't bring that masculinity. Yeah. Women aren't bringing that femininity. Guys are, you know, playing video games. They're smoking marijuana. They have no emotional intelligence because of that marijuana, or like they're always out with their friends. And so like it's almost like, you know, you can't. Is a guy or a girl is never, you know, allowed to cheat.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think that we have to take responsibility, right? Like men need to freaking step up, dude. Like we need grow. You know, like. Yeah. And that's really what's been on my mind. And that's why I was kind of thinking between what should I talk about? Should it be infidelity or drugs? Because I feel like there's so many dudes in our community who are doing drugs, like marijuana, like left, right, like long beardos, like going to the masjid every day, smoking weed all the time. And then it has such a profound impact on their marriage.
I mean, drugs, and you mentioned video games.
Yeah.
Video games. I mean, there's a whole subculture of people now that they don't even care to get married because they're just gamers, right? And they're like, why actually take care of a spouse, or why be in a relationship, a person nagging you and so forth, when I could just play all day, and you know, with this virtual VR and stuff like that, I could get my needs met, right? And it's sad. It's like what society's becoming, and like you said, men need to step up. we need to do more. You know, and we can do more. It's just that, you know, we need to lead the way.
Exactly, and that's my point too. Is that we're not women, right? So I'm not gonna give women
we
advice,
give
right? But I'm gonna tell
Yeah.
men, like, we need to take control of our relationship. We need to, you know, make sure that our spouses love us and that we're doing what we can, and that, you know, we don't give an excuse for us to step out or for anybody else to step out. And here's the other thing, right? Is that it's funny that we talk about stepping out like at that level, but honestly, there's so many levels before that, right? Like it almost goes to this abortion issue that's been going on, right? Like we're talking about abortion and we're debating it, but the problem is zina, not abortion. Like we're so far removed from the actual issue.
You know, and people don't think about it, but like there's so many forms of zina, right? Yes, obviously the physical act, but zina of the eyes, zina of the hands, zina of the feet, zina of, you know, the mind, right? Thinking about it and so forth. And, you know, that's why our deen is so perfect. It like teaches all of these things, but we're so far removed, right? That we have to go back to the core basics. You know, and if we go back to the core basics and understand our deen and understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, you know, then I think a lot of these problems could be resolved. But unfortunately, we're so far removed, like I said.
SubhanAllah, bro. You think we missed anything here in our discussion?
I mean, I think this was a really good talk. And I think it's necessary, right? It's like something that people don't often speak about, right? And I do think we need to talk about this more openly. Like I did a program recently with Mufti Azim on illicit relationships, drugs.
Was it MEC?
Yeah, at MEC.
Okay,
and actually, alhamdulillah, another masjid reached out and said, oh, we want the same program. And now we're doing it this Friday, right?
Nice. Where?
Bolingbrook.
Oh, dang. Okay,
mashallah. Mashallah, Jum'ah. And so I talked about it from the psychological aspect. He talked about it from the religious aspect. Right? So we're working together, alhamdulillah. But the thing is that we, like, since you're in this field, you're a lawyer, you deal with these cases on a daily basis. You know, I'm dealing it from a psychological aspect on a daily basis, and we're seeing it, but most people are not. Right, so they don't really know what's going on out there, and they don't know where to turn to, who to talk to, or anything. And that's why these videos that you're doing are so important. And you know, we need a psychoeducation is so important as well, right? Because we need to educate the community into letting them know that there is help. You know, I don't want to be a person that just talks all negative and like makes people feel bad and hopeless and so forth. And that's the thing, even in the sessions that I talk about with Mufti Azim, I try giving hope and saying, okay, what can we do now? How can we make things better? Okay, yes, you might have committed, you might have stepped out of your marriage. You might have, you know, had extramarital affairs. Okay, what now? How can we save the marriage? Are you willing to save the marriage? What can both spouses do? Yes, it takes both the husband and the wife, the person that stepped out, the person that did not step out, to actually make it work. It's never one-sided, right? In individual therapy or coaching, it's, yes, you focus on the person of what they can do. But in marital, it's about what each other can do for, you know, to make the marriage work. And that's the whole thing, is that if you really want this to work, there are solutions, right? And if a person has these thoughts of wanting to step out of their marriage, or they're, you know, they actually have access to, look, you could get help before it's too late, right? And if you have an addiction, there is people that could help, right? There's therapists that are trained in this, sexual addictions, to help them, right? So I don't want people to feel like there's no hope for themselves.
That's a good point. What about, I guess we can end with this. What about the person who's been cheated on? What would you tell them?
That's tough.
Right?
That's tough. Because, I mean, you know, you can never, like, people always say, I know how you feel. Nobody knows how anybody feels, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, everybody deals with it differently. Some people, I mean, are more willing to forgive and just say, okay, it was just sex, right? Or it just happened. And so a lot of people, they're like, how can this happen to me? How can it happen to our family? I thought it was perfect. And, you know, they can't, emotionally, they're just distraught now, right? But I would say the one thing that they need to do is talk to somebody, like not just anybody, not friends and family, because it's not going to be really helpful, but, you know, talk to somebody like a therapist who can actually, you know, delve into your emotions and what you're feeling and how can you move on from this, right? Whether that's in the marriage or outside the marriage, right? Like if you end up getting divorced, but you need to work on yourself, self-care, right? What can you do to help yourself? Because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of, if you have children, you won't be able to take care of them. If you stay in the marriage, you won't be able to, work with your husband or wife or so forth, right? So you have to process these emotions, and I think and if you don't do that, then you're going to be emotionally damaged. And if you do end up getting divorced, you're going to bring that baggage over, right?
No,
and we see that quite often. So work on yourself and work on, what is your end goal? Is it to stay in the marriage or is it to leave? And if it is to stay in the marriage, then yes, forgiveness, you have to forgive, even if you don't forget, like you said.
Yep.
And what can we do to make the marriage better, right? Because it does take, at the end of the day, even though it's wrong, it does take two to tango, right? Yeah. Everybody plays a role. It's never just one-sided,
Yes,
as wrong as it is, right?
No, absolutely.
And so forth. But if your goal is to get a divorce and, start over, then you have to work on, regardless, you have to work on yourself.
Yeah.
Just the divorce process is not good enough, right?
That's a good point.
Because you're going to bring in the baggage.
That's a great point. So how can people find you?
Go to www.ihsancoaching.com, IHSAN coaching.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Instagram, Twitter. Go to our website. Give us a call at 630-557-9427, 630-557-9427.
Yeah, and I'll definitely have a description below. And also that program that you're doing on Friday. Is that going to be recorded? Is there going to be any recordings of this?
I'm not sure. It's whatever the masjid wants to do.
Okay, perfect, inshallah.
But,
awesome.
alhamdulillah.
No, alhamdulillah. And on his Instagram, there's great content. They have great posts coming out all the time. So definitely follow him on Instagram. And look, I've known Farhan since undergrad, right? And, there's only a few therapists in our community, and they're all book solid, right? And so if you can get on his schedule, you can get on anybody's schedule, take advantage. Your mental health is more important than anything else, right? And so I do pray that inshallah there's more Muslim therapists that come up. I pray that you can help train them and that more Muslims take the Muslim side of therapy and integrate our great tradition into these solutions, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan.
Thank you, man. Jazakallah khair for coming, man. And we'll hit it up again, inshallah.
For sure.
All right, man. Jazakallah khair, man.